Hello and welcome to Animated Wonders, an Explosion Network podcast where we celebrate animation in all of its forms. This is Animated Wonders. In this season, we'll be discussing all the films from Mamoru Hosoda. Hello, my name is Dylan Blight, and joining me to discuss this animated wonder is Ashley Hobley.
Hey Dylan, I'm excited to be here to talk about the very original idea of dangerous AI.
Yes, we shall get to that potentially ahead of its time subject in just a second, because this week we are talking about Summer Wars, released in 2009 from Japan. Mamoru Hosoda, again, of course, Okudera was the writer of this one. It was made by Madhouse, distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures. The main cast was Ryunosuke, Kamiki, Nanami, Sakuraba, Mitsuki, Tanimura, Sumiko, Fuji. Synopsis for the film: a student tries to fix a problem he accidentally caused in Oz, a digital world, while pretending to be the fiancé of his friend at his grandmother's 90th birthday. When you say that synopsis out loud, you're like, what a wild combination of ideas. Ash, was this the first time you watched Summer Wars?
No, I've watched this before, but it has been 5-6 years, maybe, something like that.
I'm gonna say
it's been a while.
Yeah, I watched it I remember I brought it when it came out. Like, picked it up similar to last week. I picked up the Blu-ray when it released at Sanity as a new anime film to buy. So probably around maybe 2009 when it came out, maybe 2010 by the time, I don't know. But either way, a while ago. So I remembered the general idea of it.
Yes.
But not a lot more.
Not the specifics.
Not the specifics, but yeah, I just remembered digital world and
yes,
some the staying in like a rural sort of or outside farm and stuff. Yeah, what were your general reactions to watching it this time?
Yeah, I think obviously it's a very good movie with a surprisingly relevant story, surprisingly telling for our times. About the dangers of like committing so much to online worlds and the potential dangers of AI and that kind of stuff. I thought it was like really relevant now, which is funny for a movie that came out 15 years ago, or 17 years ago. Yeah, animation really cool. Like obviously hitting a lot of themes and ideas that we'll see again and we've seen before from Hosoda. But yeah, I really enjoyed it on this rewatch.
Yeah, I was the same. I enjoyed it quite a lot. I was shocked with how relevant it seemed, considering it's nearly 20 years old, and just how much that subject matter is. Trying to think, when you think about watching it, when I was watched it back then, wouldn't have ever thought that wouldn't have had the same thoughts going through my head as I was watching it now, in a combination of being a lot older and also the world we now live in. So that was I think the most interesting things. But yeah, I guess core themes I had down for this one. Obviously, AI is bad. It's like
yeah. I don't know if it's necessarily AI is bad. An AI is bad. Like obviously, Love Machine, the AI program that's designed to hack, Oz, is a bad AI. But outside of that, there's not much AI. I mean, the concept of Oz and just the consolidation of everything into one, I don't know, app, I guess, is probably the easiest way to describe it.
Yeah, like, I guess the other thing would be like...
Let's put all of our shopping, lifestyle, all of our personal information all into Twitter. And then, sure, nothing will ever happen that jeopardize any of that,
Yeah. I guess
in the real world, I guess everything is a little bit more separated. But if something like this, like Love Machine, was just to hack the internet in general, I guess it's possible.
Yeah. It just seems... Yeah, I guess it does seem like a combination of the AI super monster Love Machine thing, does just seem to represent just the evil that could happen with a world in which we trust one thing, be it an app, a program, a website, with control of all of our data. And I mean, even that still, I think that was a relevant discussion point when it came out, because that's still, obviously, we had still the internet age, and people have in 2009 people had begun to share more on social media and all these different things. So I think the hey, we could be heading in this direction would have been something that people were thinking about.
Probably at the time it was more, you're giving Apple or Google all this information, like depending on what platform you're on. And that's where you could potentially lose everything. But, nowadays everything is separated a bit more. Although the thing that I thought of when I was watching this movie is obviously all the reports out of the US that they're going to start putting grok in all the, like, through the Pentagon and through the government and all that kind of stuff. It's like, no, it sounds like a bad idea. This movie says it's a bad idea.
I mean, it was making me think that it was making me sort of think it's like we reverse give everything to AI now, like people, or AI eats everything without choice anyway. Like people feed everything into like ChatGPT or any of that sort of stuff, but then people constantly warn people, don't upload your baby pictures to do a funny AI thing, because it's probably getting it's eaten into the algorithm, it's eaten into the whatever. You don't know what the hell's going on in the background. Don't your upload
baby
anything.
Will be recreated in other pictures of babies.
Yeah, don't upload anything to those AI things that you aren't fully comfortable with what's going
being replicated for all of eternity.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing it had me thinking about is, and I think this is a little bit different for you because you don't have an Apple phone, but like every time you start a new app now on an iPhone, it constantly, every time you start a new app, it pops up and says, do you want it to allow you to track like what you do with the app and feed that information back to Apple or whatever at all times? You don't really know what it's doing with this information or how it's supposedly.
Like, you've got like a random, I don't know, video editing app, and it's asking for your camera. Access to your camera. Well, I guess video editing is probably
that would make more sense. Yeah,
like a keyboard app.
Yeah,
I need access to your camera.
Yeah, I need access to your camera. It's like, why? You're a keyboard app.
Yeah.
But anything you install now, be like, install an app, and it's like, do you want us to let here?
I know where you are and what's happening.
Yeah, can I have full information about like what you're using with this app that shows where you're using it, way out, what time, place, setting, when you do all these sort of things? And I always say no, because I'm just like, you don't need that. Just I don't need you. I don't need Apple tracking all that sort of stuff, but it pops up every single time you install a new app. And I think even when they did the update and they started doing it, it was one of those things of like people started complaining online, and then they put in the thing that now pops up and asks permission per app if you want them to allow them to track it, whereas it was for like a week or so there, it was just doing it in the background, and people started getting real shitty with like, because I assume it all ties into like, because obviously every phone has some AI depending on what they're partnered, which company they're partnered with and stuff now. So I assume it all ties in the background to how your phone is using AI and whatever. But I mean, it's also like I could sit here and say like sponge cake, and then miraculously Instagram ads are like, hey, do you want a sponge cake? And I'm like, how do you know?
How is that possible?
Yes.
I never typed sponge cake into the phone.
I never type. Are you listening? Apparently. And that's scary, but that's also just a world we live in. Yeah. So that's crazy. And then the other, I think, theme I guess I had down was just we are better united than divided, which I think it like plays in especially to the second half of the film, where obviously the first half you have a lot of these, they all get there, the uncle gets there, they have the big fight, splits off, he's going off. They nearly get rid of the kid as well, and then at the end, everyone's trying to. But then he comes back, and then they're trying to work out how to beat this AI monster. And weirdly, it's all the men who are like, "We can't do shit." The women are attempting, which is something that was noticeable. All the men are like, "No, we're out." The women are like sort of trying to work something else. Yeah, we need to fight this or whatever. And then it's when the grandmother, of course, is like, "I'm going to call up literally everyone I've met in my life." And rally a team here, and then you get to see by the end of the movie, obviously, that united front form to fight back against things. So I think that's the other thing I guess I took away. It has a very like core, like come together to fight the evil sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's maybe a little bit more focused on family as well. Like, obviously, this is all a really big family, bigger than most. So maybe it doesn't play that way. And obviously, our main protagonist or one of our main protagonists is a guy who's pretended to be the great granddaughter's boyfriend.
Now they're
but
engaged.
Yeah, I think but he could be family any minute now. So you don't know.
It's true. Very true. Animation style for this one. I think obviously we talked about last week with The Girl Who Left Through Time. Had those like the sprinkles of the animation style that we sort of come to expect a bit more when we had the jump through time stuff. And you see a lot more of that, especially like straight away in this when you see within Oz. Like
the intro does,
the more almost like very like looking purposely more like full CG animation, I guess is what I would call it. And that's sort of juxtaposed with, I guess, your more standard, typical anime style of the real world, sort of balance it off. And I think it really stands out when they're doing the cutting between the characters, typing on laptops and stuff like that in this world of Oz, and then they cut to them having like these massive like Dragon Ball Z fights in the world, and it's a lot of fun. It helps obviously keep the movie alive, and for a movie that on paper doesn't sound like it will have these big fight scenes, but somehow it does, and these showdowns and stuff like that. But yeah, what'd you make of the animation style in this one?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of fits together seamlessly. Obviously, the Oz stuff looks different enough from like the very realistic, traditional, real world stuff, So I think it's very effective in making it distinct between the two worlds. You'd never confused about which one you're in, because of the animation style, or at least the look of the animation for each world.
And sort of tying these ones together, I obviously said last week, I'll ask every week who this film is for, but I think that this one, at least for me, combined the more teenage love stuff from the last one. There's a little bit of that here, and that's where we sort of start off with, and that's on the surface. But then I think the deeper narrative stuff that we've sort of been talking about here with the the family coming together and the AI and handing over of your personal information to big corporations and stuff like that's probably a bad idea. It makes for a more, I think, layered and interesting film. So I think the audience is everyone for this one, because surface level you can watch it and just enjoy it for what it is. But I think more what makes it sort of, I think, a better film than Girl Who Leapt Through Time is because of the layered stuff here that means that people looking for a little bit more within the discussion will find that, but you can just watch it as a bunch of teenagers pretending to be together, going to a place and then fighting a massive AI and not think more about what any of that means. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to play. I think it is for everyone, but also I feel like it's going to play differently for everybody. Like obviously the younger audience is just going to be into the cool CGI fights and taking down this big AI monster. But I think when you get older, you appreciate the family dynamics and like the difficulty between Granny and the uncle.
Yeah.
And all how that relationship kind of played out. And Yeah, I think pretty interesting that he was able to achieve something like this to reach such a broad audience. Release date, yeah.
Second film in too, I think, is like there's a lot going on here, I think. All right, wondrous elements. So pick two elements that stood out for you the most in this film: animation, visual style, music, sound design, voice performances, world building, or emotional impact.
Probably, well, world building is a definite one with the creation of Oz and just the 70-something members of this family that constantly on screen. And then I guess animation, visual style, because it does look so different, and there are so many different characters and looks, and all the different looks of the avatars and the multiple forms that Love Machine goes through throughout the course of the movie. I think those would be the two I'd want to highlight out of that list. Yeah.
I'll go. I'm going to go animation, visual style, similar to you for the obviously the style sort of stand out a lot more here than Go Let for a Time, especially with the two different sort of animation looks that was just talking about. But I'll go for emotional impact, because I do think that for some people in particular, the family dynamic and story would probably hit a lot harder if they can relate a lot more to those sorts of family dynamics. And or maybe you're a hacker who's been accused of something that you didn't do, and that it'll hit really hard for you. So
just your face plastered all over the news.
Yeah.
And even though I'm pretty sure they're not allowed to do that for minors.
I don't know what Japan's laws are, but maybe a bit different.
I mean, there's a lot of questions, because she says he's her fiance, even though he's younger than her.
Yeah, I mean,
clearly does look younger than her.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming he's like maybe 15, and she's like 17-ish or something. I don't know. That's how I sort of maybe took it. What's your favorite scene, sequence, or character?
That's a tough one. Maybe the final little bit before when they think they've won, but then the satellite capsule is still coming to
bomb.
Yeah, drop on them.
Yeah,
and Kenji trying to upset the trajectory and having to figure out this code really super fast, and then do it in his head, which seems insane because we've seen how long it's taken him to crack the code each time. So yeah,
he'd use paper to draw out stuff at the start of the film to figure out the first code. So, and he still got one number wrong. So
yeah,
one letter wrong. Yeah. I'm gonna go the first one there, where he's after he wakes up and sees his name plastered everywhere, and then he jumps on and he's trying to hack on or figure stuff out with the other kid in the little room there on his laptop, and then that police officer shows up and everyone's trying to come find him, and there's that part where they're hacking or going crazy on the laptop and they're all trying to squeeze into the room, and just that whole sequence was rather
with the little boys messing with him, not giving him the remote.
Yeah,
the little touch that I appreciated was he pulled the power cord of the TV, and yet the kids kept trying to use the remote.
No,
they don't know.
It's fine.
TV just works.
Yeah. Do you think this has any place in animation history, and overall, how do you reckon it holds up watching it now?
I don't know about the longevity. It's a tricky one, because obviously it's really cool and like we said, relevant. But it's not one of his best regarded films, I don't think. Yeah, it's tough to say, because I feel like he does hit obviously watching this, I think it's clearly influenced by his time working on Digimon. A digital world, creatures inside the computer kind of thing. So it feels a little bit of an extension of that. I'm not 100% sure where it would sit. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to say that it doesn't, like, in this, again, this is very, like I said last week, it's just an open question for how you feel about it. But I'm going to say no, I don't feel like it's a film I hear talked about or mentioned a lot really at all. I think it's funny because, like, how it holds up today is it holds up rather well because, as we've been talking about most of this episode, is that all of the topics in it seem more relevant than they have been ever. So it's sort of interesting in that way, but I don't think it's one of his films that sits on our magical animation history checkbook.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
No, I mean the Granny character was really great. I thought her death scene, or like them finding her post death, I think was very impactful. The fucking cousin is the worst. Delinquent. I think it's very fitting that he is a police officer and even more relevant. Yes, he's moving ice. That he's putting ice where it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
How do you go into that room? I think all this ice needs to be somewhere else when it is.
This seems like it's been placed here for no reason.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that you stuck all the. Can we also talk about how ridiculous it is that they brought all these massive machineries into this? They brought a giant boat into the middle of rural Japan and dumped it in what was surely just a pond. Just so, because I guess it was a power thing. Yeah. It had batteries or whatever to run that. That was the theory. Just the willingness to destroy the bridge and the gate. That could have been like thousands of years old by that point.
They had no choice at this point, you know? They're talking about saving the world.
They are. I also like how much they talk about their family history and that kind of stuff. Like, obviously, because Japan is a country that's been around a very, very long time and had a lot of history within the country, within the regions. I thought that was really interesting, and they kept coming back to it. You know. Also, it's all. I guess it watching as much as we say it's relevant, it's a little dated with the devices they're using.
Well, yeah. I mean that. Yeah.
I don't know how they're operating in this magical Oz world on a flip phone. Or a 3DS.
It's also implied, at least from what you can see, it's like the magical world of Oz isn't an MMO world where they're running around and stuff like that. It just seems to be it almost seems like it's just implied to be a text-based thing that they're just imagining with avatars. But then, like, what we're seeing is just the blown up, more imagination version of it. Yeah, at least that's how I took it anyway.
I guess.
Yeah.
How it looks is what we would love it actually to be.
Yeah,
I guess
because I think especially in like 2008, let's say they're writing this in 2007 to 2008. I still think back then they're trying to keep it like semi realistic, and the whole idea of, you know, we're not at Sword Art Online possibilities in people's minds of.
No, we don't have VR booths that you jump
into. Yeah. I think it's just meant to be what we imagine it to be.
I guess, but yeah. It's funny to imagine them controlling these avatars and flying around this 3-dimensional world on their flip phone. Yeah. Also, King Kuzma looked cool.
Who?
The rabbit dude.
Yeah.
He is slightly iconic.
It's true. Yeah.
Also, it is a massive coincidence that all these people are in the same family or somehow connected, you know.
Coincidence?
The best fighter happens to be the nephew of the guy who invented the avatar, the AI that's going to infect the thing. And also, one member of the family just happens to work for some sort of secret organization that is has government intel on all the ongoing goings on inside the government and law enforcement all over the country.
Realistic. Don't knock it.
Also, it is very fitting in this movie that the US is the bad guy.
Well, yeah. US loves to be a bad guy in Japanese animation, to be fair.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who wonders why? We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Animated Wonders. Let us know what you thought of the film on social media at explosionnetwork.com/follow. If you enjoyed the show, you can find more podcasts, reviews, and pop culture coverage over at explosionnetwork.com. And if you'd like to support the podcast and Explosion Network, head on over to explosionnetwork.com/support. Until the next episode, remember that animation is cinema.